All right, welcome. This is No Better Time. I'm Phil Salter, and today I have with me Hammer once again. So thanks for joining me again, Hammer.
Yes, sir.
I was always looking forward to an opportunity to talk about something else with you because I know there's so much knowledge in there and you're fun to talk to. So I was like, we were actually talking yesterday, and I was telling you about a conversation I just had with my brother, who's a real estate agent, about real estate as an investment. And it sounds like you might have a different opinion than him, and you don't even necessarily know his opinion, but you can probably guess he's a real estate agent. So of course he's pro
Mhm.
real estate in many forms as an investment, particularly. So tell me what comes to your mind.
So yeah, this is a debate I've had for years and years and years off and on with people, and it's interesting. I was reading some quick articles, and a significant portion of these surveys show like 67% of the respondents or 60% of the respondents all feel that real estate is a better investment. So it makes sense. Like keep having these conversations. That being said, also full disclosure, twice in my life I've owned rental properties, and so I've had to deal with them and I'm familiar from that side. But in general, investing in real estate is a losing proposition compared to investing in the stock
So
market.
you're saying you've actually had rental properties, right? So I think it
hmm
almost like more legitimizes your position and from your experience. So I want to hear this because this is so opposite of how my brother feels. Um,
Yeah, a lot of people.
yeah, so
it's,
let's get into it.
it's not that popular of an opinion.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, just one. I'll start by talking about my own experience, some things I learned from it. One, time is money, right? And what I think the mistake so many people make when they look at real estate as an investment, say they look at just managing cash flow, just get positive cash flow, and that's all they care about, while ignoring all the different expenses that go into it. Now you can save some money by taking over more of the management and maintenance yourself, right? But my argument there is time is money. You can hand off more of that stuff, but that increases your expenses. You have your taxes, you have your garbage, sewage, utilities, all that stuff, and sometimes you put that on the tenant, if you can. But there's also additional risk, frankly. Like just generally when you're investing, you have to require a higher return for more risk, right?
Okay.
You look at real estate. If you're doing private real estate, you're relying upon yourself to be able to make a proper place proper value on a property, right? Along with being able to properly project its value growth in the future, along with what you can charge to try to get a positive cash flow. That all takes time. That there's additional risk there, along with what if your tenant doesn't pay? You know, uh, what if your tenant moves out? There's all these different things. There's just so many things you have to do. From just your time, from expense, then that all adds up. Where looking at past studies, like if you take all the expenses into account, actually, um, for the amount of risk you take on with legal risk, and you're seeing that right now with the pandemic, you're also subject to regulatory risk.
Mm,
You know, moratorium on evictions.
yeah.
You'd be stuck. Think of all the people who have rental properties not getting payment and they can do nothing about it, right? That can happen. And so for that level of risk, you can be subject to regulatory risk and legal risk along with capital loss, possibly. You should really require a much higher level of return than what you get typically for real estate investments. Um, Homes appreciate on an average you look over decades, you know, take different chunks, whatever, really about the amount of inflation. And so, in order to succeed at real estate investing, you really have to be able to spot the properties that are mispriced, right?
Hmm.
You have to keep constant cash flow, so that also, like, if you go a couple months without income and you have all these expenses that you incur yearly, anyways, you're destroying like years worth of returns right there. You know. Additionally, it's very illiquid, right? And whereas you look at stocks, yeah, I think a lot of times people are scared off by stocks because of the volatility. But the thing is, with real estate, you don't see the volatility that is there,
Hmm.
because you sell only every once in a while.
Uh,
There's not like this constant update every day of what your property is worth. Whereas in stocks, you see it every single day, which is a benefit because you have so much information about how to value your investment compared to real estate.
and so you feel like, and also it being much more liquid too, right? Maybe to your point,
Much more.
because you could say, I could sell this right now. There's very few situations where you can't sell stocks like in the moment, right? Maybe outside of hours, maybe, or
Yeah,
some really weird things that
yeah,
happened recently with some stocks that had things held on them, but those are very kind of anomalous, I think. I don't know
very
much
normal.
about this, but it seems like that's very unusual.
Yeah.
Like talking about like GameStop and stuff like that.
That,
But
that being said, you'll be prevented from selling for an hour,
yeah, it's not
half a
like,
day.
yeah, so it's a very interesting point. You're saying if you actually saw like the value of the home going up and down in real time, you might be like, whoa, this is way more volatile than I realized. And I'm realizing also as you're talking that my brother, when we had this conversation, he was really more going at the angle of as a home buyer, not as a like investing in rental properties. And I think he has opinions about that, and it makes me realize I want to have him on again to talk about the idea of buying properties as rental properties, which is more of what you're talking about. So I'm curious about your
Mhm.
perspective. I'm assuming you aren't renting your home, right, that you're living in. So what's your
No.
perspective on the value of a buying a home for yourself, as far as like an investment or as a way to grow its
Yeah.
value, or as well, what was the other thing I was going to say? uh, and like how could you leverage the money the bank will give you versus how much you put down on it, I guess.
Yeah. Now that's one thing. No, I'll say two things real quickly. Now, like most answers that you'll as you have more of these conversations with me, my answer will always be it depends, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to also give the impression that investing in real estate directly is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Period. It depends because one, it could work as a diversification strategy. If you have other options, like depending if you're a high earner, a lot of tax advantage options are not available to you. Real estate may be one of the only ones,
Mm.
right? Um, now back again. Again, knowing the long term, appreciation of homes, it is an appreciating asset in general. However, it's still you look over long term, like it basically tracks inflation. We are seeing a hot housing market now, and mortgage rates are really low. And so it's actually in these sorts of situations where you could kind of beat the game a little bit, you know. Um, but then again, you really should not look at your home as kind of an investment vehicle, you
Hmm.
know, um, because you live in it and it's illiquid, you know, and there are expenses, as you know, as a homeowner, there are many expenses that you never take into account, and that's reflected in the fact that you look at a lot of different websites that advise, okay, how do you really determine how much you can afford, when buying a home. A lot of them say, well, take your mortgage amount and add another 20%, add another 30%, add another 25%. You'll see that to accurately reflect the true cost of
Oh,
home
I
ownership,
see.
right? And so that applies both for looking at real estate investment as rentals and as your own home, right? Because there's all these expenses that you have to take into account when you're looking at um, where to put your
When you're
money,
saying
right?
expenses, you're referring to things like things breaking, or even talking as far as like paying water bills every month. Is that part of that equation? Or
Yeah,
okay, like
yeah,
all the
exactly.
expenses
Your
that you wouldn't
bills.
deal with if you were not a homeowner.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
You know,
So you're saying, like
mhm.
you were saying, it's not like you're saying, oh, this is an absolute never do thing across the board. It depends, like you said. And honestly, it sounds like if you were someone who had a lot of income and you're looking for diverse ways to use that income, it could be a way to, like, I've already maxed out Roth IRAs, all these other things, maxed out all these other things. What's another way I can use my money to work for me? So, but you wouldn't
Exactly.
say that'd be someone who's like maybe in my position. You might not advise someone like me going and buying a rental property if I have all these other things I haven't been doing yet. Okay.
Exactly. That would be my advice.
Okay. Makes sense.
Frankly, as you get, higher incomes, so many options just aren't even available to you. So real estate becomes almost the only option.
So that's why you hear about
You
such
get
rich people with real estate, but it's like it's kind of chicken and the egg, maybe in some
mhm.
ways.
some people can do it,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. like those people that do it and are successful and get known is because it's an unusual thing. It's extremely difficult to do. And
Hmm.
so, the way that I invest in real estate is I invest in REITs, REITs. So I put my money in stocks that trade liquidity, that very, it's on the stock exchanges. So it's very liquid. They are subject to all kinds of rules and disclosures because they're on publicly traded exchanges. So you get tons of information, you know, and you're paying for the ability of these professionals who do it as a full-time job, and they have teams, entire companies that do the valuation, the upkeep, the maintenance of these
Wait, so
properties.
you're
You
investing in a
can't,
company that buys rental properties and you're investing in that. So you're not necessarily on the ground doing that, obviously, because the company's doing it. It's like another type of company to
yeah,
invest in. But what's the advantage of, or what's different about that versus just some other company like Apple? Like you're investing in Apple versus one of these companies. It's kind of the same ultimately, right?
yeah. Because I mean, honestly, in general, like if you look at also data, rights outperform the broad market by quite a bit.
Really? I haven't ever heard of Rights. I want to look into this. R-I
It's interesting how many people have it. Like they are a fantastic investment.
Really? RITE. And these are like publicly
REITs
Oh, I totally
stands for
REITS. Rights.
T, rights.
Okay.
So a right is a real estate investment trust.
Okay.
So they are corporations that they buy real estate. They manage them and they get a return off of them. And they're required by law to pay out at least 80% of their income as dividend
Wow.
payments.
So the dividends are high.
Dividends are always much higher on
Because if
these.
with dividends you're getting these payouts, which my understanding is aren't guaranteed, but you can kind of look at history to say what's the
Hmm.
average dividend payout per year, percentage wise, right? And
Exactly.
then, but you're also potentially hoping to get growth on the actual stock itself that you have in it, on as well
Yes.
as that. So, it's kind of interesting. So, okay, how would I find a right? Would I just can I search rights like in like Robinhood or
Mhm.
something? REITS.
Um,
I could just
I don't
Google it and
know if
find out different companies, and then I could
yeah,
get their like name and then look them up. I guess. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
No, I'm definitely
exactly.
going to look into that. Thank you.
And that's the thing. Like, so, like, if you are doing it directly yourself, you have to be able to figure out, okay, what is my net asset value of the properties I own? What was the possible net asset value of that? Net asset value, right? The value of that asset minus the debt, right?
Hmm.
Um, you have to do those calculations to figure it out yourself. And another thing that's become really popular, people talk to me about, is these crowdfunding private real estate investment groups, where you basically get on these sites, you lend out your own money through these basically exchanges, I guess, for people who want to. It's basically like a right, but private. And that's the thing. There's so much less disclosure. Like, what really is the value of that property? How good is this person? What is their track record? You really have no clue, really. Or if you do it through the stock exchanges, through these rights, they are subject to so many different regulations and constant disclosures. And you can look it up. You can look up, okay, what is the net asset value of all the properties per share? Boom,
It's
there
like
you
an
have it.
open book,
Okay,
right? By nature, being
open book.
public.
You can say, okay, this is trading at a discount to their NAV by 20%. I think that's a good investment. So you put money to it. That's what I've done. And frankly, like the rights, a huge portion of my success of my portfolios have been investing in rights when they've been undervalued. Um, and the cool thing is, because they're less known, because they are subject to interest rate risk, they've been beat up, and they have a lot of them still have not fully recovered from the pandemic. So there's still a lot of good values out there for rice right now. Um, anyways, I'm a big believer
Oh
in them.
no, I'm really glad you brought that up to me. Like you said, it sounds like a lot of people don't know about that, so I'm glad to have that brought up. I have a few quick questions, so I think we want to kind of keep this to another 6 minutes or less. So
Mm-hmm.
really quickly, something that I realized pretty quickly as I've been kind of diving into investing in the market more and actually buying individual stocks is I did notice that pretty quickly. Like, oh, this is actually because I was really considering the idea of getting a rental property. Um, and I kind of determined some reasons why I didn't want to do that yet. And if I did do it, it'd be later on. I'm not against the idea, but this has been kind of enlightening to think of not just the positives, like what are the potential pitfalls and risks. Uh, but I realized pretty quickly, like, wow, it's pretty cool. I can actually like with just a few dollars, I can do something in the stock market versus I had to have a lot of money and go through a lot of process to get
And there's a lot of
into
risk.
real estate. You know what I mean? It's a whole lot more. It's much more of a higher level of barrier of entry or whatever. So that's really cool about
Exactly.
the stock market. I'm realizing is I can do something today. Even if I had $30, I can do something today with it. I can go buy
Yeah.
$30 worth of a rental property, and I can't do that today. But
Yeah.
unless I guess I get in the right. But
Yeah.
and
Or that's why some people get interested in jumping on these sites and doing this private crowdfunding, because they can just put in what money they have.
okay,
But see, the risk there is even higher because like you don't really, there's no requirements around disclosure of the people who are going to take your money. You can kind of set the rates, and those rates are pretty high because like double digit percentage, APRs or whatever that you're supposedly going to get. But like the default risk is so high because you really don't have a clue about this person that you're lending the money to, nor do you have really a good idea about really the value of the underlying asset. Like everything is disclosed,
yeah,
on the stock market.
interesting. And I guess my next question for you is: you're aware of my plan, right? I want to upgrade my home and get a nicer home, and within a certain timeline. What are your thoughts on that? Like, should someone be buying a home? Should they be upgrading their home?
Again, it depends.
Oh yeah, that's a good
But
point.
in general, homeownership tends to be a good thing. The data shows, now how much of it is correlation versus causation. It's hard to really know, but generally there's a wealth building effect from home ownership. That being said, it does depend because you can end up upside down, and we've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can get you in trouble of risk of foreclosure or default, which can have more effects than just your living situation, right?
Yes.
Dinging your credit can affect you for a long, long time. That being said, in general, homeownership is a wealth building activity.
Yeah, I mean that's been my experience. It's the one thing I've done that's been made the most difference for dollar to dollar what I put into something. What I've seen is like actual return, and obviously a lot of that has to do with just timing that I couldn't have predicted, just luck. Really, I
Yeah,
bought it about 4 years ago, and it's just in the last recent, it's really gone up. But that doesn't mean that will stay. It could go
yeah.
down. Right? I recognize that for sure, but it's
Part
definitely
of that is you live in an area that is experiencing influx of population
yeah.
and economic growth.
So you could take that
That
and say, "Oh yeah, well then that just tells me that's real estate's always a winner." It's like, well, not necessarily, right? So you can't
Mhm.
always base everything off of very limited exposure and a positive experience. It's like me, I'm going to go buy some risky stock. Whoa, it just gave me a 50% return in 2 days. I'm going to do more of that. It's not like that's going to happen every time. But
Yeah, yeah.
anyways, I really appreciate the conversation. Uh, really good. That's what I love about these is just always thinking differently about my assumptions and my thoughts, and I'm really getting to the point now where I'm trying to decide what's my goal, what's my motivation, because part of me feel I'm realizing that with time my goal of having a certain amount of money will just kind of happen. So I think I'm being too conservative in what I want to do with my next 2 or 3 years. Like I don't think saving up $40,000 is enough. I need to think bigger. So that's what I'm trying to decide
Mhm.
now. And because I realized my house is worth more than I thought when I made these calculations. And I'm like, oh, if I sold it today, I'd actually almost be where I was already planning, hoping to be. Now the question is, where am I at beyond that? So with my
Yeah,
overall
that's
wealth and money that I have, in things.
yeah,
So
and that's one of the also problems with your home as an investment is because unless it's your last home that you're selling,
mhm.
you're going to put that money into another home that's also appreciated,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
So yeah, that's the thing. But I will say, good once again, thank you. Hopefully, I'm sure we can find another thing worth talking about for 15, 20 minutes sometime soon. If anyone has any questions or wants to add to the conversation, if you think Hammer is just off his rocker, or if you think he's freaking brilliant, we want to hear about it. If you want to add to the conversation, if you want a different topic, anything, you can email me at nobettertime.podcast@gmail.com. And at least for now, if anybody emails me, I will read it on the podcast, at least part of the email, and go from there until it gets too much, which I would dream. That'd be amazing if I had too many emails to read. I'd like to get that first one, though. That'd be kind of cool. So thanks for listening, and have a great day. And just never stop learning, turning to those around you that have experience. Remove the pride and the stubbornness and just learn, and you'll be way better for it. All right. Have a great day.